Moving on, so I'm going to probably freestyle this a little bit more. So we're going to just jump into ChatGPT. So we briefly kind of mentioned ChatGPT in the first talk that we did a few weeks ago. But for those who've not come across it, I think that the way that I would probably describe ChatGPT is think of ChatGPT as a basically as a librarian who's read all the books in the world, and when I say that, probably up to about 2021, in terms of the information available, and you can kind of go and ask them any question, and become the font of all knowledge from a book and academia perspective. What I would say is to treat any output with caution. So it's not always 100% accurate, and Neil gave some quite good examples in the previous webinar. I think it was around pepperoni toppings, and where the fifth character, a pizza topping, where the fifth character is the letter P, and it just kind of get giving the wrong answer. So treat the output with caution, but actually is a really good tool off the back of it. So Mark, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share my screen and just kind of take over this, if that's okay. So so ChatGPT to start with. So firstly, if you've never used this before, if you go to chat.openai.com, you can go and create a free account there. This is a tool that you can kind of go and have a play around with. It gives you a certain amount of credits that you can use, which I've yet to run out on the free side of things. There is an upgraded version, which is kind of the newer version of ChatGPT, which you do need to pay for, but we're not really going to cover that today. This is just kind of more the principle of some of the benefits that it can bring. So firstly, there's lots of different things that we can do in here. So we can ask it questions. So we can use this from a almost like a conversational basis if you're trying to find out information. We can use it to create content. So one of the things that we like Neil was saying with NeuronWriter, a lot of these other AI tools will link into ChatGPT in terms of creating content. We can use it for things like creating code. So kind of web designers, coders, IT people might want to create certain code to do a certain task. I'm not really going to touch on that today because I don't really want to go too technical in terms of the part of it, but or things like asking it to create interview questions for a certain role, or asking it to analyze information and actually give you some findings of it. So really quite diverse in terms of some of its capabilities. We're just going to kind of touch on that as well, and also the sense of personality sometimes that it can give us. So we can ask it to write articles and information with a in a certain tone or in a certain context. So to kick off with, once you've gone to chat.openai.com, we can go and create a new chat with ChatGPT. And in this case, let's keep it on the subject of the webinar that we've got. So I'm going to ask it to write an article to demonstrate. If I could type, it would help this morning. Demonstrate the benefits of AI. So we can keep it really simple to start with, and I can just ask it to go and write me an article in terms of doing that. And you can see quite quickly, this is starting to generate some content that's, when you start to read it through, and I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time over this, but is pretty well written. It's fairly indicative of kind of any kind of Google search result. You might find an article that's very similar to this, but the personality around this is fairly neutral. It's not particularly necessarily very exciting, but we can start to feed more information into ChatGPT and actually change the context of this article that's been written. So as a little bit of fun, we can start to kind of give these different writing styles. So you might perhaps want it to be more persuasive. You might want it to be slightly more humorous. I could say, as an example, rewrite this in style of Donald Trump. So I think we can all imagine, Trump talking, and the way that he would, and immediately the styling of this. Let me just stop the generation of that. But the way the way this is worded, the way the title's been changed, um, you know, starting to read this through, you can see and you can almost imagine Trump, saying this stuff out loud. All the kind of positive anecdotes, the way that he would talk, etc. But again, you can change this into different stylings if you want to go kind of another end of the spectrum, and perhaps this is a generational piece from me, but the style. So this is for any South Park fans out there. Hopefully, this doesn't come up with anything offensive. But right in the style of Eric Cartman, which is a character on a South Park character. So you can immediately see the same content is now being written in a completely different way. Um, Really quite, super quick to do, in terms of creating content, and creating information. You can see very quickly how with just some interaction we can really change the way that this reads, the way that it feels, and actually just is a huge time saver. There's some other examples that might use this as well for, though, from a business context. So sometimes, going into interviews, or if there's new roles or we've got people coming into an interview, I might just want to quickly compile some questions that I want to ask them. So um, in this case, I might say, actually, create some interview questions for a finance director. Just scroll down, and ChatGPT is now giving me, and again, they might not be exactly what I want to use, but it gives me a real starter for 10 of some questions that I might want to ask somebody in terms of doing that particular role. Other kind of examples that I've certainly used this for is things like creating instruction manuals, or instruction guides. So let's kind of take it something completely away from IT. Um, you know, create a set of instructions to change the. So create a set of instructions to change the fuel pump, in a Ford car 2010 model. And again, pressing enter, it's going away and creating me a set of instructions. Again, how I certainly wouldn't want to comment on the accuracy of this information, but again, you can see very quickly most of the things in there look fairly on point. Might want to go in and refine that with, kind of a more detailed knowledge of kind of mechanical engineering. But ultimately, it's gone and created me a guide and some information, something that would have potentially taken me quite a long time to go and create previously. So you can start to see the variety of things that we can start to do with things like with ChatGPT, is is really quite varied. So, and from a coding perspective, this isn't just about creating content. So if you did work in IT, or you're a marketeer, or from a website company, I can ask it to write some code to do a particular task. I can ask it to create me a set of instructions, or a set of ingredients to create a particular meal. Um, from a business context, you can actually then get it to analyze information. So as an example, perhaps if you were applying for a job and you want it to analyze your CV, and get it to compare your CV to a job role that you're going to apply for. Now, I'm not going to necessarily show a CV on here, but one of the examples I was going to show is actually perhaps writing a covering letter, for a job role. So in this case, we've got a job that we've got advertised, on our website at the moment. So I can go and grab that text, so which I've already got here. So I've got a job description here that I've just kind of grabbed from the website itself, and there's roles and responsibilities within that. Now I can go to ChatGPT and say something like, write a covering letter, applying, sorry, And I'm just going to copy and paste that job description in there. And because I'm asking it to go and create a covering letter, it's going to give me the bare bones of the abilities of writing a letter applying for this particular role. So we can start to see some of the key points. It's pulling out information in here that's within the job description, in terms of kind of the technical skills and capabilities in there, in terms of certifications that kind of meet the requirements of that job description. And it's gone away and created that, and that will be pretty much on point. You might want to go in and tailor it and customize it a little bit. But actually, by feeding it some information, you can actually kind of get it to go and do a different task. This kind of is extended to things like where you can get it to analyze data. So I've done some things in the past with ChatGPT of putting things like some Excel information within there and getting it to go and analyze and give me some data and information off the back of it. So some of the capabilities in here are really quite varied and can be really quite complex. So hopefully that kind of gives you some ideas around kind of the use of ChatGPT, aside from kind of coding and things like that, which a lot of people tend to use it for.